Greetings aspirants, welcome to Narayana IAS. In this session of daily news analysis, we have picked up certain important articles from Hindu as well as Indian Express for in-depth analysis and a simplified understanding of the issues that are concerned for this particular examination, which is a rare combination. Before delving into the articles that we have chosen for today's analysis, let me state this. Please like, share and comment on the video and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Narayana IAS for all the updates that are required for you to crack this UPSC Civil Services examination. We shall now delve into the articles that we have chosen for today's analysis. The first article that we have chosen is from the Hindu, which is titled "Give Kerala One-Time Package to Tide Over Financial Crisis. Supreme Court Tells the Centre." Published on page number 6, here the Supreme Court is trying to play a role of an arbitrary mechanism through which this particular issue has to be settled, because it is one case which has been filed by the Kerala government where this is being considered as an original suit for the purposes of the issue that is at hand. The second article that we have chosen is again from the Hindu, where the intra-group caste variances, equality are the issues which are now at the concern, where the 7-judge Supreme Court bench is going to deliver its judgment on a particular law which has been passed by the Punjab, and the law is subjected to lot of interpretations pertaining to the affirmative action towards some of the disadvantaged sections of the society. The third article that we have chosen is India was the top arms importer in 2019-2023, which is again a report published by CIPRI, an institute, again from the Hindu Delhi edition. The fourth article that we have chosen is again from the Hindu, which is referring to the management of the nuclear waste, where it is referred to as how nuclear waste is generated. And the last and final article is from the Indian Express, where it is titled "Why Does Statute Not Say Clearly Only Parliament Has Power to Impose the Tax on Minerals?" And at the end, we will also have certain practice questions, both of preliminary and main kind, and with that we will conclude the today's analysis. We will move to the first article now.
Dear students, embark on your UPSC journey with Narayana IAS Academy. Our esteemed 5-year and 3-year integrated programs are now open for admissions in Hyderabad, Vijayawada and Nellore. Our courses include robust R&D backed initiatives such as daily news analysis, daily news review, which are comprehensive review program for a broader understanding of our day-to-day happenings, which are current affairs. Similarly, we have NCERT program, which is a foundational course that covers all the NCERT syllabi, which is crucial for UPSC preparation. We also have a mentorship program for personalized guidance, and we also have a regular test series for systematic learning and assessment of the student. So begin your journey to become a leader with Narayana IAS Academy today. Embark on this journey, make your dream come into a reality with Narayana IAS Academy.
In this particular article titled "Give Kerala One-Time Package to Tide Over Financial Crisis," Supreme Court is trying to convince the Union government that Kerala needs an immediate assistance from the Union government, and as it is unable to meet its expenditure even for this particular month, given this particular package that it is requesting Union government to provide to the state government of Kerala, as it says, the possibility of going for more and more austerity measures can be thought of post this particular financial year, postponing it to the next financial year. Given this particular suggestion, we shall look into some of those very intricate problems that the Kerala economy has specifically, without looking into the political aspects, which can also be discussed, because as you see, in this particular issue, the Supreme Court is trying to act as an arbitrator rather than acting as court of jurisdiction looking into the constitutional issues, which may take a very prolonged time for the Supreme Court to really consider the issues which are underlying, which are in fact constitutional in nature. Hence, this arbitrary role that the Supreme Court is trying to perform. This particular article, as we have chosen, is being discussed from the economy point of view rather than looking at various constitutional issues on the one hand, and on the other hand, we also look at how this fiscal federalism as a required structural element in Indian society and Indian polity is also getting affected because of such irrational ways in which the state economies may behave. Moving ahead, look at these previous year questions. This question asked in 2021 is trying to look into the impact of the recommendations of the Finance Commission. How have the recommendations of the 14th Finance Commission of India enabled the states to improve their fiscal position? Meaning, the 14th Finance Commission, which has increased the devolution of the taxes towards the states by an enormous percentage, would have led to betterment of the state's financial position. Does it happen or not? Clearly, if this is the reality, this would have also acted as an impact over the Kerala economy. But what you see on the contrary is something very, very drastically different. The second question asked in 2013, again, the central government frequently complains on the poor performance of the state governments in eradicating suffering of the vulnerable sections of the society. Restructuring of centrally sponsored schemes across the sectors for ameliorating the cause of vulnerable sections of population aims at providing flexibility to the states in better implementation. Critically evaluate. As you clearly see here again, the fiscal federalism in terms of objective of addressing the problems of the vulnerable sections of the society has been come into picture, and even in this perspective, this issue is going to be important for your examination, both preliminary and mains point of view. What is the context? As you have clearly seen, Supreme Court has urged the centre to give Kerala government a one-time package to tide over the current financial crisis as a special case before March 31. As you clearly see this particular deadline, it is referring to the current financial year and the financial struggle that the Kerala is going through, because of which in this particular financial year also it is unable to meet certain expenses. What state government of Kerala says is that this particular way in which the union government is trying to deal with this issue of financial situation which is worsening for the Kerala economy, it says this is fit for the violation of federal structure of the governance that has been mandated by the constitutional framework. Hence, it has filed an original suit under Article 131 in Supreme Court, alleging that this is in violation of federal structure of the Constitution. Second, alongside it also said, through this violation, the union government has caused severe damage. How? This has caused severe damage by trying to impose the limitations over the borrowing powers of the state, whereby it alleges that the economy of this so-called small state was crippled as it already has certain meager resources alone in order to meet its requirements. Hence, it says that this financial crisis in India has become unavoidable. On the other hand, Centre says we have to put compulsorily the borrowing limits on the state of Kerala as the required austerity measure. Why? According to Union government, the Kerala economy has already reached the required fiscal imprudence, because of which this limitation is mandatory. Second, it also says that there are no funds left for the capital expenditure and hence these restrictions are mandatory. Third, it also says that the state budgets have continually been inflated, by which it means that, as you clearly see when we present the budget estimates and when you see the revised estimates, both will be having certain gap, by which it means that whatever the budget that has been presented is an inflated one rather than the rational one. This is what we also have seen as what is referred to as fiscal marksmanship. This fiscal marksmanship has clearly failed with respect to this Kerala economy, as central government observes. Fourth, it also says Kerala is plagued with this problem of poor resource mobilization because of some of the fundamental concerns or issues that it has at the level of implementation. For example, Kerala government is the one, or Kerala economy is the one where the institutions are incurring more costs in raising the revenues. This is not the case with many other states. Then what you see as a consequence of this is that the schemes that have been announced in the budget, that have been continued through the budget, have less resources to finance them. Citing all of these, union government says austerity measure and in the form of what is referred to as limits on the borrowing powers of the Kerala government is a mandatory. And as you clearly see that this financial crisis is looming, now we have to look at what are those various dimensions that we have to know, whereby whether state government of Kerala or the union government of India are right in their approach. Just see these particular characteristics of the financial crisis in Kerala. The first thing that you have to note is that this particular crisis, as you are seeing now, is not a one which has been created because of the situations at present. Remember, Kerala has been going through such crisis on number of occasions since 1970s. In this particular case study, as you see, which has been the data taken by the Planning Commission reports and also the RBI bulletins, as you see that the surplus that we have from the what is called as revenue account, as you clearly know that budget has both revenue and capital. Accordingly, revenue side you will measure what is the income and what is the expenditure. Similarly, on the capital side you measure what is the income and what is the expenditure. As you see that if income is more than expenditure, then there is revenue surplus or then there is capital surplus. Similarly, if this total expenditure is less than the total income that is being generated by the state, then it is also showing a surplus on the behalf of the budget. But here, as you see, the revenue account had been positive on few occasions, but it had been negative on many occasions. And in comparison with all states, the Kerala government was having revenue deficit on most number of years, particularly during those 5th, 6th and 7th 5-year plans. And in this particular case, as you see, it is also true with regard to the capital account, wherein the capital account was showing less number of negatives than the other states in comparison. What this particular thing entails? This entails that whenever you have revenue account and capital account, what we in general see as a pattern is that the revenue surplus whatever you have will be transferred to the capital account such that you incur expenditures which generate the capital formation for the economy and then lead to more productivity and more production in the economy such that it generates further employment and further goods and services in the economy. As against this, when you see that capital account is showing the negative characteristics than the other states in comparison for more number of years, it means that the revenue deficit is already there and the government is unable to meet all its revenue requirements or revenue expenditure requirements such as salaries, wages, pensions, interest payments, etc., because of which it is also taking money out of capital account and spending to meet these particular requirements. This had been the case for number of years since this 5th 5-year plan period as we observe. Second, this also proved this particular fact. The revenue expenditure as part of, as you see, non-plan expenditure is at those higher levels, and as you clearly see, this points to the fiscal imprudence of the state government. Number 3, as you also see that this is prolonged and structured and this has continued even these first 2 decades of this particular millennia, and even now as you see clearly that the fiscal deficit and the revenue deficit are clearly at higher levels. And as you see here, if you look at the percentage change in the revised estimates, as you see, it is showing an increase of 20.2% and fiscal deficit is also showing an increase of 7.9%. Rationalization of these deficits was not possible for the state government of Kerala, and hence this proves the fact that the Kerala is going through the financial crisis. Second, you have to also observe that the percentage amount that you see here of the revenue deficit out of the total fiscal deficit, that is revenue deficit out of total or gross state fiscal deficit, it is more than 60%, which points out that the revenue deficit, as you see, is unable to meet their revenue expenditure. This points to the fiscal crisis in the economy. Second, as you see that it is also following an unsound fiscal policy which has been continued. As you clearly see, 70% of the total expenditure that the state government has through this particular budget alone for last 2 years of budgets, even if you consider, the 4 components have become nearly burdening for the state government. This is primarily because of the fact that the state governments have continually increased the salaries, wages and pensions as part of their revision of the pay scales. Even in 2021, 11th Pay Commission has come up with this pay revision, because of which it had got a burden of more than 15,000 crores for each and every financial year. This is the first thing. Second thing, even if you consider the last 10 years of the economy and its average, 51% of the total revenue expenditure is again going to these 3 requirements alone, excluding those social development requirements that it has, which doesn't give rise to any capital formation and non-development expenditure. Moreover, as you clearly see here, there is higher share of both of these. Also, if I include this, it is going beyond even the 85% levels. Moreover, if you observe that the state is at the same time receiving highest amount of revenue deficit grant as recommended by the 15th Finance Commission in this particular period of 2020-2021 to 2025-2026. By and large, this is the fact which is also true pertaining to even the previous decade. As you clearly see here, the crisis is not just an immediate one, it's a very prolonged one. Third, as you clearly see, this is also due to the poor fiscal management, which is again a structured character that you see with respect to Kerala economy. As I have already pointed out, growing revenue deficit as a percentage of revenue expenditure, growing gross fiscal deficit as a percentage of total expenditure has been a pattern in the Kerala economy at least since 2011-2012, and even before that 2002-2003, 2003-2004, Kerala government was going through this vicinity of fiscal crisis in its economy. Moreover, the growth rate of public debt is averaged at this level of 15% for the last decade, by which it clearly means that it balloons the debt to GSDP ratio, that is gross state domestic product ratio. Moreover, there is a slump in mobilization of state taxes and non-tax revenue, which also points out to the inefficiency of the tax administration and also by and large the various problems within the Kerala economy. Also, you also have this situation of public sector undertakings performing poorly in Kerala economy. However, they have been continued by providing budgetary support, which is again an evergreening of the expenditure of these public sector undertakings without in return getting any amount of profits. All these put together, you also see that according to the Comptroller General of India, not only these budgets have been distorted by the state economy, but also there are many arrears which are pending, and this arrears means that there are many cases pertaining to the revenue generation taxes which are pending as cases in either High Court or the tribunals, which is also making their finances getting crippled. Moreover, it is also showing that the economy is functioning poorly and inefficiently in resolving these issues of tax-related disputes that it has with the taxpayers. On the other hand, we also see that the situation has worsened post 2018 floods and 2020-2021 pandemic, because of which there had been a complete lockdown and the recovery is still an ongoing process. There is also one lesson that has to be learned, because Kerala is one state where the demographic pattern is showing somewhat a concerning trend. As you clearly see that its growth rate of the population is below the replacement level birth rate, and hence this is again a demographic factor which is contributing to this situation, wherein this situation of slump in the mobilization of the resources in terms of both tax and non-tax revenue is clearly visible. Given these particular aspects, as you see, Kerala is clearly under the situation of financial crisis, which is not out of any situation at present, but it is a structured crisis which has continued through certain decades. We shall now move to the next article. In this particular article, the author is trying to delve into one particular principle which has evolved as the ultimate notional principle that has to be implemented, adhered to and practiced in real-time situations in the society. That is this notion of equality and justice. It is believed that the societal organization was on the basis of the hierarchical structures, and these hierarchical structures were defined on the basis of certain power notions, and hence these have created unequal and unjust societies throughout the evolution of human civilization. It is this which is being subjected to debate on the basis of one issue within our society, that is subcategorization of those communities which have been considered as vulnerable and subjected to historical injustices. And hence, looking into this issue, this particular article is trying to delve into some of the contours of the equality and justice as aspects of human civilization. This particular article is not only important from polity point of view, but also from the society point of view, but we shall limit ourselves to just the political aspects of this particular issue or the constitutional aspects of this issue, whereby this issue is important from the significant provisions of the Constitution, and as I said, this is also significant for society and social justice. Look at this previous year question. Caste system is assuming new identities and associational forms. Hence, caste system cannot be eradicated in India. Comment asked in 2018, this clearly shows the importance of this issue for the examination. As we see, the 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court of India is going to deliver its judgment. Judgment in this case of State of Punjab versus the Davinder Singh, whereby it is trying to address a particular question of law. That is subcategorization possible within a particular community which has been provided with affirmative action? And it is in this particular context, we have to also say that this particular judgment is of enormous significance for what? For the future of the entire affirmative action and reservations which have been carried on under the framework of Indian Constitution. Moving ahead, if you look at this particular issue, what you see is that constitutionally the SCs and STs, that is scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, have been considered as a homogeneous category as defined as part of the Constitution, as it is clearly interpreted by some of the legal luminaries. Second, we also see at the same time that there are differing levels of development within this so-called homogeneous category defined as scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, and there are some castes which have been subjected to more discrimination in the abstract sense than the other particular communities within these particular categories of SCs and STs. It is both of these which have been kept and put into the conflict with each other. Now, should we consider for the purposes of affirmative action or the purposes of reservations, whether these communities as one single homogeneous category, or should we also take into consideration these differing levels of development and these differing levels of discrimination that they have been subjected to, is the fundamental question. Moving ahead, what we have to know is the background. In this particular case, what we saw was the Punjab government has issued a circular where 50% of the vacancies which are there reserved for the scheduled caste communities must go to these two particular communities, that is Valmikis and Mazhabi Sikhs. Second, pertaining to the similar concern, what we had was the Andhra Pradesh government had also came up with similar law in 2000, which was challenged in the Supreme Court of India, And in 2004, in this case of E.V. Chinnaya versus State of Andhra Pradesh, Supreme Court has categorically mentioned that the subclassification within the scheduled caste category is unconstitutional because procedurally under Article 341, if any of the list of scheduled caste communities have to be released in the form of a notification, that can be done only by the office of president, and if there is amendment to be made to that particular list, then the power lies only in the hands of the parliament. As against this, the state government has passed this subcategorizational law, and hence this has been struck down as unconstitutional. On the other hand, based on this particular judgment, even in 2006, Punjab and Haryana High Court have struck down this particular circular which has been provided with this 50% of vacancies towards the Balmikis and Mazhabi Sikhs. Moreover, in order to reverse this judgment, in 2006, the Punjab legislature again passed this Punjab Scheduled Castes and Backward Classes Reservation in Services Act 2006, whereby now the circular has been replaced with a particular law in spite of this judgment in 2004 in the case of Andhra Pradesh, where they have provided for this subcategorization, and this had been subjected to appeal in 2020 to the Supreme Court. As you clearly see that it has been allocated to a 7-judge bench, because in E.V. Chinnaya versus State of Andhra Pradesh case, it was the 5-judge bench which has delivered its judgment, and this 7-judge bench was allocated to it because they were of the concern that whether there was any error of law in this judgment which has been pronounced in the E.V. Chinnaya versus State of Andhra Pradesh case. It is this which is going to deliver its judgment now, which is the reason why this is in debate. What is the constitutional framework pertaining to such issues? Fundamentally, we have to make sure that Article 14 is being observed, which is establishing this general principle of equality as fundamental principle of the constitutional framework. Given this, if there is any classification of the communities, then that classification must not be an unreasonable classification, but a reasonable classification, whereby this classification still adheres to this principle of equality. Hence, if you are making a classification of the scheduled caste communities, which has been considered as a homogeneous community, then this classification must be a reasonable one. When you are considering the underdevelopment and more degree of discrimination that they have gone through, then such classification may be considered as a reasonable classification, and hence provision of affirmative action towards such communities may be reasonable, given the fact that it ultimately upholds the general principle of equality. Otherwise, it would remain as unreasonable classification of the society. Second, Article 16(4) has clearly mentioned that the state, in case of situations wherein there are certain communities which have had inadequate representation in the services of the state, it can take up measures in favor of those communities. Given this, it is also part of the fundamental rights of these communities. Third, under Article 341, as we know, as we have already discussed, this power of notifying who are included in the scheduled caste communities is lying in the hands of the office of president, and hence the president alone can issue such notification. And second, this can only be amended by parliament, that too through a particular law. Moving ahead, hence, what are those arguments which are in favor of this subcategorization? Remember, the 1950 presidential order, as it is said, was just to identify the communities which are part of scheduled caste state-wise, but not meant for providing reservation. Second, as we know, there are varying levels of educational, economic and social development among these castes which are grouped under SCs, and hence accordingly the differentiation must be also be made in these particular lists for the provisioning of affirmative action. Third, subclassification, as it is said, if we provide, then eventually this will do away the necessity of reservation altogether, because the social mobility and economic mobility can be catered to those most downtrodden communities. Fourth, clearly Article 38(2) under DPSP has directed the state to eliminate inequalities in income and inequalities in status amongst all the groups of people, Given this direction, this again supports the argument of subclassification. However, there are few other arguments which are against a subclassification. One, it is common that the untouchability has been the underlying cause for what is referred to as identifying these communities. Second, as we see in the case of the so-called issue of balkanization in this region of Balkan, and you also see similar thing occurring even in the state of Manipur, where Meitei communities and Kuki communities are quarreling and fighting with each other. Similar situation might occur even in this particular scenario, and hence the danger of creating instability to the society may also be existing. Third, the discrimination against certain castes within SCs and STs is also a reality. However, this discrimination is what again based on the factor of untouchability or purity and pollution principle that has been considered as the factor for disintegrating and segregating the society into various sections in the form of caste. Moreover, Article 15.4 and Article 16.4 have permitted greater discretion on behalf of the union and the state governments to identify backward classes amongst the SCs and STs, by which they can give more provisions to these communities rather than providing for what is referred to as subclassification for the purposes of affirmative action. However, we have to keep in mind, as we have started at the beginning itself, that equality and justice are the most fundamental principles of this constitutional framework, as B.R. Ambedkar has stated. Given this requirement, even an element of inequality which is causing a substantial social immobility for certain communities, then this must be reversed, and if the affirmative action is the way out, then the classification into subclasses of the communities will render the required objective of achieving justice for those communities, eventually leading to the situation of giving up completely the idea of reservations. Moving to the next article, we will discuss this article titled India was the top arms importer in 2019-2023. The Stockholm International Peace Research Institute has released their report wherein how the world is moving away from the requirement of peace and international order is what the focus of this particular article is in terms of data. And as you clearly see that India has increased its defense allocations to the tune of 5.78% in comparison with the previous budget estimates as it has announced in the interim budget. This article is significant for us from the preliminary examination point of view. Look at this particular previous year question. The foreign direct investment in the defense sector is now set to be liberalized. What influence this is expected to have on Indian defense and the economy in the short and the long run? Asked in 2014, clearly in tune with the examination requirements. As we clearly see, the International Arms Transfers 2023 report clearly shows that India has remained as the world's top importer, and these imports have increased by 4.7% between the previous report for the period 2014-2018 in comparison with the present report of 2019-2023. It is this which is a concern now. We shall look at certain patterns which are important for the preliminary examination, which can also be used in the main examination pertaining to some of the fundamental questions of security. One hand, look at the India's arms imports outlook. Firstly, by accounting for 9.8% of the global arms imports, India is the largest importer. Second, if you look at the main suppliers of arms for India, Russia still remains as India's main supplier, accounting for 36%. However, it is for the first time since 1960-64 we find that the deliveries of Russia have made up less than half of India's arms imports. Third pattern, as you see, there are increasing supplies from the West, which indicates that there is a shift in terms of our orientation for our defense requirements towards the West, particularly from France and United States. Both of them account for nearly 46% of India's imports of arms. Fourth, if you look at these major contracts, it also includes the procurement of these MQ-9B drones from the US and the Rafale M fighters from the France. Moving ahead, if you look at the global outlook, the global arms imports, and if you look at their trends, the major arms importers shows a particular pattern. One, India is leading these imports, followed by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Ukraine and Pakistan. This order is important for your preliminary examination. Second, European countries' arms imports have increased by 94% given the geopolitical tensions that we are seeing. And over half of these arms imports by European countries is from USA, up from that 35% in 2014-2018, clearly showing their tilt towards US and NATO. On the other hand, 9 of the 10 biggest arms importers in 2019-2023 either are from Asia and Oceania or in the Middle East. Then Ukraine became the 4th biggest arms importer globally after it received transfers of major arms from 30 states in 2022-2023. Now you look at the outlook related to global arms exporters. Given the current situation across the globe, it has been reaped by USA by increasing their arms exports by 17% in comparison with 2014-2018 report. Second, Russia's arms exports fell by more than half during the same period, again pointing to the geopolitical tensions and tilt towards USA. Third, France has emerged as world's 2nd largest arms supplier at this increase of 47% in their exports. And 5 of the top 10 arms exporters saw a decrease in exports between 2 5-year periods, that is China, Germany, UK, Spain and Israel. This is another point that you have to keep in mind. As we were seeing earlier, there are certain regions which are having more imports towards them. If you look at this, the sustained high levels of arms imports in Asia and Oceania, including by Japan and South Korea, are primarily driven by the concerns over China's huge geopolitical ambitions. It is these patterns that you see which are threatening the global peace and moving the international society towards more and more divisions. Moving to the next article, we will discuss about this issue of nuclear waste management. This issue is important for your GS paper 3 and also prelims perspective, where indigenization of science and technology is one aspect where this can be asked. Look at this previous year question asked in 2017. Give an account of the growth and development of nuclear science and technology in India. What are the advantages of fast breeder reactor program in India? Clearly in tune with the examination requirements. We clearly know that this core of the long delayed prototype fast breeder reactor vessel has been now loaded, whereby we are on the cusp of what is referred to as stage 2 of its 3-stage nuclear power program, whereby we can power this by uranium and plutonium. We have learned this earlier. Now the possibility is that we can make use of our vast reserves of thorium. This also we know. Third, this particular aspect is raising one important concern, as we have seen, that this nuclear power is also accompanied by a very difficult problem, that is the waste management. Now, what this nuclear waste is? Nuclear waste is produced when nuclear fission in the nuclear reactor occurs. When it occurs, as we know, the atoms of the radioactive material such as uranium-235 are bombarded with the neutrons, and when they are bombarded, they clearly get split into because of the destabilization that happens, and they release also energy with smaller radioactive elements which can be referred to as the waste. It is this which has to be managed. However, this is very dangerous because they are both radioactive and at the same time they are very hot, and it takes prolonged period of time to make them cool. It is this which may cause serious environmental problems and health hazards, and hence it is danger to deal with these spent fuel. Now, what to do with regard to this? One aspect is the idea of safe storage, which is referred to as the spent fuel management. How to do it? globally there is one particular phenomenon. For example, take the American situation where they have nearly 70,000 tons of the fuel which is being maintained as inventory. These will be placed in huge steel containers. They will be placed under water, enormous quantities of water, particularly seawater. As you place this, they take millennia to get cooled down, in fact going beyond whatever the longevity that is possible for anatomically referred to as the Homo sapien, that is ourselves, and hence this is a very difficult process, number one. Number two, as we have seen, hence it needs extended isolation. This is one aspect of it. On the other hand, whenever there is liquid waste, then this liquid waste treatment would be possible in one particular format. Whenever there is an aqueous waste material which is having what is referred to as the diffused radionuclides, these can be released into the ocean water or sea water as IAEA has already recommended, and this is one possibility. We are seeing these discharge practices with regard to the Fukushima nuclear power plant. On the other hand, if there is a high level liquid waste, then this will be subjected to the vitrification process. The Baba Atomic Research Center has had certain progress with regard to this, which will be ultimately leading to form what is called as the glass. On the other hand, this India's reprocessing has been questioned on the basis of the safety and environmental concerns, given the fact that they are subjected to most of the times human contacts. Hence, there are other methods also in order to make sure that the spent fuel can be managed. One such method is the geological disposal, by which it means that the waste is put into a huge container and this will be stored underground. However, the concern is that this container integrity may be subjected to the issues whereby either due to natural factors or due to anthropogenic factors, they may again cause the environmental and health hazards by releasing the radioactivity from these containers when they are broken. Third, another possibility is the reprocessing of the spent fuel. Reprocessing here means separating the fissile material from the non-fissile material which has come out as the waste. This requires enormous quantities of capital expenditure on the one hand, and on the other hand, this also requires a very formidable storage facility in order to make use of this fuel for the next stage of nuclear program. So, this nuclear waste which gets generated is either from the pressurized heavy water reactor which generates lot of waste, or from the prototype fast breeder reactor that we have. On the other hand, as we clearly see, this also is subjected to the fuel efficiency because there are many radioactive materials which are getting generated because of the nuclear fission, and it involves lot of cost as we have clearly seen. Moreover, the plutonium that is getting generated as part of this nuclear waste is also having this quality of weapons usability, which is distinct from weapons grade plutonium. It is this, as IAEA has already standardized, has to be provided with certain safeguards. Moreover, there is involvement of high level of per unit cost in order to maintain these particular nuclear waste, number one. And number two, there are hence significant financial implications of nuclear waste management in the overall economics of nuclear power. This cost includes not just the power plant capacity and operation at various stages of its operation, such as front-end waste management, where you start taking the fuel, you process it, you make it into the usable form and then subject it to nuclear fission. Then the depleted uranium management or operational waste management, as we have already seen, in the form of spent fuel or in the form of liquid waste that gets generated, and then decommissioning costs if there is any decommissioning occurring, because a nuclear power plant will operate from 50 years to 70 years, and then the back end of the fuel cycle once we have completed its utility. Concern and difficulty that we have with regard to this so-called waste management, that is nuclear waste management. Now, India has 3 reprocessing plants in Trombay, in Tarapur and Kalpakam, where the spent fuel is being treated to separate reusable fissile material from waste. Second, this reprocessed waste then is managed and stored safely, whereby we are putting all efforts to minimize the human contact. Third, as we know that India's PFBR, that is prototype fast breeder reactor, is aiming to utilize plutonium-based fuel to create more fissile material than it consumes. It makes a significant step in India's nuclear power program, and hence this highlights this ongoing challenge of what is referred to as managing the resulting nuclear waste, because as you create more fissile material, you are also creating more and more nuclear waste to be managed. This is the challenge which has to be addressed. Lastly, as there are environmental concerns and health related concerns, it also becomes an ethical issue, and hence the responsible and sustainable waste management practices have to be the way out when we are adopting this nuclear power as one of the way outs to combat climate change as a concern. Moving to the last article, we will look into the constitutional issues involved in this particular issue of who can impose tax on minerals, whether it is union government alone or the state government alone or both of these. Moving ahead, look at this previous year question. With reference to the management of minor minerals in India, consider the following statements. First statement, sand is a minor mineral according to the prevailing law in the country, which is the right statement. State governments have the power to grant mining leases of minor minerals, but the powers regarding the formation of rules related to the grant of minor minerals lies with the central government, which is a false statement. State governments have the power to frame rules to prevent illegal mining of minor minerals. As you clearly see, this question shows that this particular topic is important for preliminary examination. The context is that this 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court, which is a constitutional bench, has raised certain concerns. Concerns regard to what? With regard to the clarity of taxing authority regarding the minerals. Who can tax? Whether union government alone or the state governments also have the right to tax the minerals. Here, the central government is saying that there is a need for tax uniformity across India in order to make sure that the mineral development is in tune with the requirements of the India's economy. However, there is a concern that it might undermine the federal distribution of power which has been enshrined in the Constitution. What is that? The entry 54 of the list 1, that is the union list, says that the regulation of mines and mineral development lies in the hands of the union government. On the other hand, if you look at the entry 50 of the state list, then it says that the taxing rights of the state governments are subjected to some of the regulations related to mineral development by the parliament. On the other hand, if you look at the entry 53 of the union list, it clearly says that the rights over even the mineral development pertaining to the oil reserves also lies with the union government. Given both of these, the dispute is whether the state governments have the right to tax these minerals as it is clearly mentioned in entry 50 of the state list, or is this subjected to the regulations, and does this regulation even include limiting the taxing rights of the state government? This is the primary issue in this particular case. On the other hand, you have this Minerals Development and Regulation Act, which is limiting the state's legislative authority to levy taxes on the minerals, and hence the state tax, if any imposed, will be now considered as invalid or unconstitutional. It is this issue which is being taken up by the Supreme Court. Second, what Centre argues is that from the economy perspective, there must be uniformity in the taxing structure such that there is private sector participation. Second, then only it can prevent inflation. Otherwise, there is a duality of the tax structure because of which there will be increased pricing of what is referred to as these minerals. And then this alone can promote the development of mineral sector on the market standards, ultimately promoting the domestic industry and also reducing the import dependency that we are now concerned with. And in this particular thing, it has mentioned that in this judgment of pre-India cement verdict of 1989, there was immense royalty and tax variation across these states, where some of the states have levied 300% and others have levied 500%, and hence defeating the purpose of mineral development in India. And hence, Center argues that the legislation has to be on the basis of the principle of uniformity, which according to her is emerging from entry 54 of Union List. Having completed the discussion over the articles, we shall now solve certain practice questions. Take this first question. Consider the following statements regarding nuclear waste management. First statement is, when the uranium-235 nucleus absorbs a neutron, it can create nuclear waste including barium-144 and krypton-89, which is the correct statement. India's prototype fast breeder reactor aims to utilize plutonium-based fuel to create more fissile material than it consumes, which will eventually be helpful in reducing the nuclear waste generation, which is a correct statement. And hence, for this particular question, which is asking you to identify the statements which are incorrect, both of them being correct, answer has to be D. Moving to the second question. Consider the following statements regarding India's prototype fast breeder reactor. First statement says, Bharatiya Navikiya Vidyut Nigam Limited Bhavini was established to construct and operate India's most advanced nuclear reactor prototype fast breeder reactor, which is the correct statement. The second one, the uranium-238 layer encircling the reactor's core will experience the nuclear transformation, generating additional fuel and hence being termed as breeder, which is also a correct statement. Hence, for this particular question, both of them are correct and answer has to be C. The third question, with reference to the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution, consider the following statements. First one, taxes on services comes under the ambit of list 2 of 7th schedule of Indian Constitution, which is the false statement. Second one, banking, currency and coinage comes under the ambit of list 1 of 7th schedule of Indian Constitution, which is the correct statement. Hence, answer has to be B, that is 2 only, because the question is asking you to identify the correct statements here. The fourth question, consider the following statements. According to Fiscal Responsibility and Fiscal Management Act 2003, the revenue deficit as a percentage of total expenditure must not exceed 20%. There is no such provision under the law, hence has to be incorrect statement. Second, according to FRBM Act 2003, the respective states can prescribe a revenue deficit at 2% of their gross state domestic product, which is also a false statement. The question is, which of the above statements are incorrect? Both of them are incorrect and hence answer has to be C. Moving to fifth question. Consider the following statements regarding the recent CIPRI findings on global arms transfer. The first statement is, India is the world's largest arms importer, followed by China, which is the incorrect statement. It is followed by Saudi Arabia. Second statement, France emerged as the world's second largest arms exporter, surpassing USA, which is false statement. It has surpassed Russia. How many of the above statements are incorrect? Answer has to be both of them, because both of them are incorrect. Moving to the mains practice question. Take this question. Critically analyze the need for subcategorization of scheduled castes in India and the issues concerning it. A 250 words question, a 15 marker. By introduction, you must write the principle of equality as established by the Constitution and the reservations which are actually meant to uphold it, which is what the category of scheduled castes in fact are trying to cater to. Second, in the body, now you can write about the basic principles underlying the reservations, such as backwardness, efficiency and representation in the services of the state, and then you can write about the issues involved in the subcategorization of scheduled castes, where you may refer to the homogeneous category as the SCs would cater to, and on the other hand, this subclassification would ensure that there is reasonable classification even within the subclassification. By mentioning such points, you may also write about the critical aspects which are involved in these particular issues. By writing that, then you may conclude your answer, whereby you may state that the state's power to make reservations is clearly mentioned in the constitutional framework. However, this must be balanced with its duty to ensure that the constitutional dream of equality is also maintained. That's all for today, and this is the end of today's DNA analysis. If you like this video, please do like, share and comment on the video, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel Narayana IAS, the one-stop destination for all of your UPSC Civil Service examination requirements. Thank you one and all.